Hi. I just realized as I was tidying up my studio that I had forgot to show you what actually what it looks like inside this little tiny sketchbook that I made. So I'm going to do a little flip through. As you can see, you're seeing it in reverse. This is 2021. I can't tell if this looks right in your in the screen or not. So it's a concertina book that I made out of one sheet of watercolor paper. It's a small pad that I used because I didn't know if this was going to work. It's I think 15 by 25 or something like that. So I took the one sheet of watercolor paper, I painted it, then cut it and folded it up. And then I made these covers. So these covers are made out of cardboard, which I've then covered in a like a brown craft paper and used my hand-carved rubber stamps on them. And I've put an elastic at the back so I can keep it closed because I plan to do more of these, and I'm looking forward to having like a shelf full of my little experimental books. I think that's going to be fun. So anyway, I'll show you what's inside. The point of this book for me was to just kind of loosen up and try out some new things. Like I set limitations for myself on the book that I was going to use collage on every page. I was going to use one color scheme through the entire book, and I wanted to use the drawings that I've been working on of the plants and flowers that I've kind of posted here and there over the last year. So I didn't necessarily start at the front, but I will start at the front here. So this is a concertina book, so it folds out like an accordion. And this is my first spread. Unfortunately, when I put the cover on, I didn't give myself enough space that it would open flat. Lesson learned. I will do that next time. So this one has, you can see I've used old book pages. I've used some tape that I was using on my other experiments, and then I have my flower here. And these are from my my stamping experiments this year, which I've used on a few of the pages. My next page, I think, is much more successful. This one is, I really like the color scheme. I do have glare from the light here a little bit, so I'll try to tip it. So I've drawn on tracing paper with a white pen, traced over my drawing, and then collaged it on, and then used paint to kind of hide the edges. Even though it did kind of disappear, but it disappears better on a light color than a dark color, which is something I learned while I was working on this. And these are, again, bits of collage papers from my stamping experiments earlier on. Keep in mind that this is all used with the same 3 colors of paint. And they look, if you look, completely different. It's really quite amazing what you can do with 3 colors of paint. So this one was actually the first page that I did because it seemed to be the most complete once I folded it up. And this drawing here is, again, traced out of my sketchbook onto tracing paper and collaged on. And if you can see, you cannot see the edges at all. It completely disappears into the page, which was something that was interesting to learn, and that I'm hoping to use to carry forward into some of my larger pieces. This one is the same kind of thing. This one also seemed pretty complete once I folded up the page, and just adding that little flower in and changing a couple little things seemed to just finish it. It was nice that the first couple were super simple, because it encouraged me to keep going and make things kind of work. And those two, you see, together have a very similar kind of color palette. Now I cannot, this was an experiment and it didn't really work. I can't open the book out completely because when I folded it up, I actually glued these pages together because it was an overfold. I don't know how to quite explain how I folded that, but because it's one sheet of paper, it's folded in sections and then cut and folded together. And I glued them together because I didn't want it kind of unfolding into a full piece of paper. But then I didn't realize before I did this that then I wouldn't be able to necessarily open out those pages because they're glued together. Anyway, lesson learned. Next time I'll leave it. So this one, again, I think is quite successful. If you can see, I've used a page from an old book and a drawing. This was one of the first ones that I did the drawing on and put it on dark instead of a light background. And it's interesting because it does look kind of frosted almost with the line. And I like that effect. So that one is, again, something that I'm going to use. And I use the same effect here with this. This here is also collaged on tracing paper. This, I used a stencil and white paint on the tracing paper. Again, some book pages. And these two, again, are very similar in tone. One has a little more green, one a little more brown, but they're similar and they kind of go together. Okay, this page, this one was interesting for me. I used, this is tape. It's a piece of masking tape from when I was doing the little tiny squares where I taped up the paper and then painted it, took the tape off and cut up the squares into my studies. And this was my leftover tape. And I decided to use the same color scheme for the book, so it worked quite well. It kind of blends in. So I've got some overlapping of collage elements here with the book page, the tape, the book page, and then the drawing on the tracing paper on top. And there's a lot of collage in this one, which is not something I've ever really done before, experimented with. So it was really fun to kind of get comfortable with the ideas of being able to move things around and see where it works and do different compositions based on what I wanted to use for my collage elements. Now this one here, again, I've got that problem with the book not quite laying flat. This one I don't think is quite as successful because I've got the book paper with the collage underneath, and it just seems a little bit busy, and the line here on the white over the book page kind of gets lost. But then I put this in here, and I liked the kind of contrast between the solid silhouette with the drawing. And then there's collage here and there's collage under here, so there's a lot of experimentation on this one. So this I did before I did this first page, and this one, oddly, I think is even less successful because the background is really too busy. But lesson learned, right? The ones that were successful, the background is pretty simple. These blue ones here, the background is simple with this over top. So I wanted to try it and see if I could get it to work. I even painted a little bit on top of the collage paper to kind of tone things down a little. It didn't work quite as well, but it was a really good experiment. So that's the book. And one thing that I always do when I'm doing studies like this is I put notes. So if you go backwards on this, I have notes on everything. I've got notes of what my colors were, what I think, what I like and what I don't like about each of the spreads on the opposite pages. And this will work for me like a little sketchbook that I've got kind of tucked away when I decide I want to get back to something like this. I have some references that go with what's on the other side. Now, I was really happy with this project. I thought it was a lot of fun and I learned a lot, so I'm going to do a bigger one. And I will try to film the entire process from start to finish, and I'm going to use a full sheet of watercolor paper. The problem with that is my table's not quite big enough to put the full sheet of watercolor paper on and paint it because I've got a lot of stuff here. So what I think I'm going to do is paint outside that initial painting, and then when I cut it up and fold it, I'll be able to work down in my studio. So there you go. That is my sketchbook. If you have any comments or anything that you'd like to say about what you've seen here, or any questions on how I've done something, go ahead and ask. I'm an open book. I will tell you whatever I know. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.